Hello and welcome to the Storytelling with Puck podcast. We will, as always, start with a story.
So my start to my story is I laugh very easily. So I laugh at any little thing. And as you know, laughter is the best medicine, and it is a great thing for well-being as well. And so the incident that comes to mind is that I don't know if I told you this, Stefano, when we were having a chat, but I sing in a Bollywood band. So at one time I was on stage with my band, and I was saying something, and there was an audience of about 600 people in the auditorium, and something that someone said made me laugh, and I went into this fit of giggles, which happens to me. So and I could not stop giggling. And so if you can imagine that scenario where I'm trying to say something and take the show forward, and these 600 people on the auditorium are staring at me, waiting for me to finish giggling, and for the giggles to subside before I can carry on with the next bit of what I was going to say. So that's kind of me. I laugh very easily, and I get into these kind of situations when I start giggling.
Oh, that's brilliant. And as we can tell, I think already people listening can probably tell laughter is contagious, because I'm giggling away here as well. I think I love to walk past people and just even see them smile, and that suddenly makes me smile as well. So thank you so much for sharing that with us. I cannot wait to find out more about you, and we are going to discover loads more about you singing in a Bollywood band as well. That sounds incredible. But before all of that, let's have a quick introduction to the podcast.
You're listening to Storytelling with Puck, the podcast designed to show the power of stories in life and in business. Stories connect us on a deeper level, which is why we'll be sharing, chatting about, and feeling the impact they have on every one of us. Your host, Stefano, is the founder of Puck Creations, and we work with your business to define a clear, consistent, relevant brand which stands out from the crowd. We use that brand to create content that makes your audience think, feel, and take action. Visit puckcreations.com to find out more.
Before you do that, take a breath. Close your eyes and listen closely. It's time to inject energy, purpose, and soul. It's time to rediscover joy, to bring back compassion, to ignite our hearts. Let's take the stress out of it all and take a moment to say hello to today's meditative guest, Hansa Pankhania. Hansa, please introduce yourself.
Hello, everybody. My name is Hansa Pankhania. I am an author, a speaker, and a trainer, and I'm passionate about everything about well-being. So that's me, basically.
That really is you in a nutshell. I like it. Short and sweet. Hansa, we've only met very recently, but I was captivated by the work that you do and by the stories that you share. And I think just as importantly, and your original story captured this too, the energy that you seem to have. And since reading more about the work that you do, I think I have an inkling as to why. But instead of me trying to answer that, let's ask you instead. Where did your interest in well-being and stress prevention come from?
Well, I went to university as a mature student, and during that time, I was going through an extremely stressful phase. So my father passed away. I had a young family. I was studying full time. I was studying part time. I was working full time. There was lots of stuff going on in the family, and I was going through a very stressful time. So I did my university thesis on stress management, and through my research, I was coming across some very simple breathing relaxation techniques and very simple methods to alleviate stress. And so as part of my research, I would practice these techniques. And I found that they were so simple and so profound. And it was actually that got me through that stressful phase in my life. So after that, I made a commitment to share this with the wider world. And this is when I set up my consultancy and started delivering training on stress management. And then I have just built on my areas of expertise as I have gone forward, on this journey.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. And it's a horrible thing to go through, losing a parent. Anyone who listens to this podcast regularly will know that sadly I lost both of my parents, and I know the stress. I know the leading up to it happening, when it actually happens, the aftermath, the grief, all of that you have to go through and cope with. So to have these techniques must have been a welcome relief, but also must have felt quite strange, I imagine, in some ways, because you were actually studying them at the time. And so did it feel just coincidental, or did it feel like it was almost meant in some ways for you to be happening at the same time?
Well, Stefano, I believe that, you are sent a lesson, but then you're also sent what you need to learn that lesson and get to the other side. So I guess, the way the subject of the thesis came about, it was almost as if it was divine intervention, because I remember that moment. I was really struggling to come up with a topic for my research. And then I went for a tutorial with my tutor, and this conversation happened, and I can't actually remember how the conversation went, but I came out having made the decision. That's what I was going to research. And so really, and actually that's something that has shaped the whole of my career. But what happened with that conversation with my tutor, I can't recall it, but actually I came out, with that decision, and that shaped the whole of my personal and working life, to be honest.
It's incredible how sometimes some of the most important conversations I think we ever have, we rarely remember the actual details of. But this relates quite nicely to stories as well, actually. You remember the feeling that you get from the conversation, and you remember the action that you took after having that conversation as well. Clearly, you weren't going to get this particular action because it shaped your whole career, and as you say, a lot of your personal life since. Yeah. But also there was that feeling that this is right. This is what I need to do.
Yeah. You just get this feeling in your gut. This is the right thing, and so that's how my journey started.
Okay, well, you say that's how your journey started, but let's take a step back a little, because you said that you studied part-time as an adult learner at university. Yes. There's a whole life before this, if you studied as an adult learner. So tell us a little bit about what was going on before you went to university, and what made you... I think it's quite a courageous thing to do, to go to university as an adult learner, actually, because I think it's less people do it. So what made you strike up the courage to decide to go and learn as an adult learner?
So I think I was always a frustrated academic. I was quite good at school. I was quite bright. I didn't really work hard, but I did really well in my studies in secondary school. So this was in Africa, because I was born in Kenya under the British colony. And then for my further education, when it was time for me to do my A-levels, that's the time that I moved to England. And I did my A-levels, and my brother wanted me to go to university because, my brothers are academics, and they wanted me to follow in their footsteps, and they knew I was quite bright, and that's the career path that they anticipated for me. But during that time, I met my husband and I fell in love, and really all I wanted to do was just get married and be with him. So I didn't go to university. But then when I had my two children very quickly, And it's after my daughter went to school and this space was created in my life that the intellectual frustration kicked in. And that's when I decided to, pick up on that academic journey, and decided to go to university then.
So there was an itch the whole time, but love conquered everything.
Yes, yeah.
But only temporarily.
Yeah, but it surfaced, and I just absolutely love learning. I just love that environment. I just blossom when I'm in the kind of a university environment. And as I said to you earlier, I've been working at Reading University this week, working on a wellbeing project, and I just love learning, and I just love that learning environment. So my learning journey is never stopped. It's carried on since then.
I'm similar to you in that way. My love of learning is insatiable. I have recently started studying what some people would probably think is some of the most basic history, but history around the world, again, just for fun, for no other reason than for fun.
Yeah.
So I understand completely, I think, and I think lots of our listeners will too, why you had that within you. But then I guess what's beautiful about it is that it became more than a hobby, more than just an interest. It became your life.
Just a way of life. Absolutely. Yeah.
That's brilliant. So your company is AUM Wellbeing Consultancy. Or OM.
Consultancy, yeah.
Tell us a little bit more about it and what you do.
So I set up on wellbeing consultancy after I graduated. We started to deliver just basic stress management training at that time, and then in terms of the development of stress management and wellbeing, there was then a focus on resilience building, and then the shift to wellbeing. And so along the way, as we work with different companies, and as you know, with stress and resilience and well-being, there are so many tangents to it. There's so many variables. So if a company is going through change, there'll be a lot of stress. If the culture is wrong, if there is a lack of communication processes, if there is lack of management skills, all these things will create a lot of stress within companies. So, and for individuals as well, there are so many variables in terms of stress and well-being. So as we were working on different projects, we gained the expertise on all these different tangents of well-being. So our repertoire then began to grow. So now we're at that stage where we offer well-being coaching to individuals, as well as to run full well-being projects for companies. And also work one-to-one with leadership teams and managers. So we can do anything from an individual who is suffering from anxiety and stress to working with a company to help them to change their culture around, to make it more compassionate and heart and soul centered, where well-being is an integral part of the culture. And so we can coach managers, we can offer consultancy to leadership teams, we can do very short projects. We can go in and do a spurt of training managers on the legal duty of care, or on employees, helping them to build resilience. So anything along this continuum, we can. I've got a team of affiliates, and they have different areas of expertise. So we can, we can work on anything along those lines.
That sounds brilliant, and I'm sure there'll be a lot of businesses interested who will care about the well-being of their employees and will want to will care about their own well-being too, and will want to support them as much as they can. There will also be some, because there always are, who will say the well-being of my employees is second to the productivity of the business. I need the business to be flying. I need to be bringing in as much stock as possible, and more importantly, selling as much of it as possible. X, Y, Z. There will be different companies will have different criteria. What would you say to them about why it's just as, if not more important, for them to do your training?
Well, it's all connected, and I would make them aware of how this is all connected. And I don't give them any figures and any statistics. I tell them two stories, So I say, okay, you got one employee who is so stressed out, is nearing burnout, is going home, is drinking, is not motivated to come to work because of the kind of pressure and culture that you have in your environment. And so he's simply forcing himself to come to work because he has to pay the mortgage and pay the bills. So that's one employee. The second scenario with that with another employee is the employee looks forward to coming to work on a Monday because the culture is very caring, it's very compassionate. The managers listen and take an interest. They give a lot of praise for the achievements at work. There is a support given for when it's needed, and that person looks forward to coming to work. If you go back to the first scenario, if the first employee doesn't get the support and goes off sick, then how's that going to help your productivity levels? Eventually, if that support is not put in place, that employee will leave and go to another company. So you will incur more recruitment costs, more training costs. You've lost all this expertise that employee had. So how is that going to increase your productivity and your profits? So actually taking care of your employees and having that right kind of compassionate, caring culture is actually integral to your levels of productivity and profits. And so I usually kind of say exactly what I've said to you.
Well, it's a brilliant answer, and yet sold. You're hired. It genuinely is a very good answer, and I was obviously fishing a little because I knew that you would be going down that path when I asked the question. But I think sometimes that's what some companies. It's becoming less common. More and more companies, I think, are understanding the power and the importance of well-being. But some companies still think that, well, as long as they're here and they're sitting at a desk and they're here from 9 till 5, and, you still see it all the time in certain areas of politics, etc. Well, we have to get everyone back into the office. And there are arguments for and against that. I'm not going to get into that kind of debate and fight right now. But the adamance, the insistence that there is one way to do things, and that it doesn't really matter what our employees think, it doesn't really matter what anyone else thinks, as long as we're making money for our external stakeholders, I think can cause huge problems. And even if we can't change the minds of some of these business owners and the morals, I guess, of some of these business owners, if we could give an answer like you just gave, then at least we get them to realize that actually treating your employees is better for you too. Then we can tap into that self-interest a little bit more sometimes, I think.
Absolutely. The reality is that that model where you got the first kind of employee who's not taken care of, a certain company can only sustain that in the short term. You can't sustain a company with that kind of culture in the long term, because people will leave. There'll be no loyalty. The employees will not be ready to go that extra mile, and be loyal to the company. So I can't see that working long term. Eventually there has to be some change that has to come about.
That's right. I completely agree. Now, having said all of that, a question which might sound a little strange after our last part of the conversation. Is there such a thing as good stress?
There is, yes. I wouldn't put it as good stress, but we need some stress, but it's when it becomes excessive that it becomes harmful. So, we all have a very huge pool of creative energy within ourselves that needs to be channeled into something that feels natural and that is aligned to who we really are. So we need those demands and we need those channels to use up this energy in creative ways. So we need that a little bit of that pressure and motivation to do that. But it's when it becomes when those demands and pressures become excessive that they become harmful.
Right.
So when I train, I've got this graph where you've got a level of stress along the continuum and your level of performance. So if you haven't got any stress, you'll still, if you haven't got any demands and pressures on you, you will still be stressed and you'll be in underload because you are not channeling your creative energy in the right way. So, for example, people who are unemployed or children are a very good example because they have a lot of creative energy. And if you don't give enough things to use up that energy, they'll start to tantrum and become very, very troublesome. It's because they're in underload. So you need that that amount of pressure on you to use up that energy. So going to a job where your creativity is used to the right level in the right way means that you would be in balance and you would be in the resilience zone. But when those pressures are in excess of what your creative energy is, then you get into overload and all these signs come up. You start to feel very tired, you start to make bad decisions, you start to lose concentration, you come home and you're not very good with people at home, you might turn to drink or whatever. So these are all signs that say you are in overload, and if at that point the situation is not addressed, you will go further down your level of performance until you hit complete burnout or a complete breakdown. So it's very important to be in the middle of the graph, in the resilience zone where your levels of your resources and your level of creativity is nicely balanced, with the demands that you have on yourself. And I think sometimes you may have excessive demands at work, and sometimes you may have excessive demands at home. And if that's the case in one or the other, you can manage. But if the fact is that you have excessive demands at home and at work as well, that's not going to work for you. So these are the kind of situations that we work with, and we help people, employees and individuals, to help them to understand what the signs are, whether they're in underload, overload, and then to put the right things in place, very simple everyday things in place to stay in the resilience zone all the time.
Give us and maybe if you don't mind, because I read a blog article of yours, give us some examples of those things that you tell people to do, and if you can, maybe talk a little bit about how technology has an impact on all of this as well.
Sure, yes. So you must have read my technology blog, the stress and technology blog. Yeah. So technology can be helpful, but it can be stressful as well. So, I think remote working is a very good example. When people are working remotely, the expectation is that they will be available all the time. And so putting those boundaries in is very helpful. But if I use the same example that I used before of the first employee who is not motivated, is feeling tired, goes home, shouts at the family, reaches for that bottle of wine, starts to get very anxious on a Sunday when he thinks about going back to work on a Monday. And that's kind of the typical client that comes through our door, right? So we would help that person to understand, firstly, why he's feeling the way he's feeling. So because he's on overload, also he hasn't been doing the right things to build up his resources as well and build up his energy levels. So we start by, so the kind of care plan or work plan that we might have with that person is firstly to identify what all the stresses are at home and at work. So home, he says, is fairly okay, but work is very pressurized, very excessive workload, not enough support from manager, and so something that he could do is to be aware of this, to be aware of his the legal duty of care at work and what the expectations from his manager in terms of support would be, and to then have these conversations with his manager, with his HR or occupational health, and open up those channels of communication where the right support can be put in place and the legal duty of care is applied in this case. So that's the work thing. On a personal level, it's making him aware that he's not doing the very simple basic things that would towards his well-being, that would help him to manage, not just manage, but to do really well with this situation. So for once, he used to go to the gym, but not motivated anymore. When he thinks about going to the gym, oh no, yeah, it just feels too big. So how about starting with just some 5 to 10 minute walks every day? That's not so big as kind of packing your bag and driving to the gym and doing an hour's workout and then coming back again. And if he hasn't got the motivation to do something big like that, then just to start with little things. So how about 5-10 minutes of exercise every day? How about just sitting in the garden and engaging with nature, listening to the birds, putting his feet on the grass, maybe going for a walk in nature. How about some breathing and relaxation techniques? And on the AUM website, aumconsultancy.co.uk, we have a free resources page, which has got breathing and relaxation techniques from some of my books. So I would point the client to there. So breathing and relaxation are very good because they increase your energy in very profound levels, but they don't take any effort at all. So if you're just sitting there lying on your bed or slumping on your sofa.
Maybe, Hansa, actually, if I can interrupt you for a second, and this is very cheeky of me because I haven't asked you about this in advance.
Okay.
And I will suggest to our listeners, if you do not want to do this right now, then maybe skip about 4 or 5 minutes forward. But would it be possible to maybe go through a technique together? I'm quite happy to do it with you. I meditate a lot anyway. So I will just be listening and be your student. And maybe all of our listeners could also be your students.
Sure, yeah. Let me just finish saying how we would work with this person, and then, the people who are listening, they can get ready for the little practice that I'll do in a little while. So if you just finish off whatever you're doing, if you're listening to this podcast while you're cooking or whatever, maybe you want to put things aside and stay in a quiet space for the technique that I'll share in a minute. So going back to this person. Simple, regular exercise, time in nature, breathing and relaxation exercises. Therapeutic writing is a really good way. So if this guy is really angry with his manager, do some unsent letters to the manager. There's also a technique called empty chair technique where you verbalize your feelings. You are offloading those feelings. So he could imagine the manager sitting in an empty chair, has a good go at the manager, and gets all that the build-up of that negative emotion out of himself. There's also gratitude. So if he's lost confidence in his ability to work, we would remind him of everything that he has achieved, maybe do a positive biography, which is about going back through your life and bringing up all the good things and all the achievements and all the good things that people have said to you, and writing that down and reading it regularly to build confidence in your skill set again. So it's all these, and so these are some of the things that come to my head, but there would be other kind of specific things that are specific to individual clients that will bring and share the kind of techniques that would be appropriate for that person. And so after a few months, this person is feeling full of energy. He's got the clarity of what the issues are. He's got the life skills that he can carry on using to remain resilient throughout his life. And he's got the clarity of how he should be supported at work and what he should do in terms of taking responsibility for his own health and well-being. And he takes away all these life skills. And so the expectation is that he would remain, be able to be in this resilient zone for the rest of his life because he's taking those life skills away with him. So basically, that's the kind of journey that a typical client will travel with us. Yeah.
That's a truly full-bodied solution. And as you said, I think all of those techniques you've just offered are really universally useful. And I think our listeners are going to be very happy to be able to try and take some of them away, and they can look for more guidance on these on your website, which you've already mentioned as well. So that's brilliant. That they can I guess advance themselves a little, and they can also go to you for that extra support. But what I also love is if they need it to be tailored, which a lot of people do, because actually there's very specific issues which nobody else is facing that are exactly the same. Then you're there for them to say, well, actually, okay, let's see your individual situation. So I think that's perfect, and it will be really helpful to people. And yes, we definitely will get to talking about your books a little bit later, because they're they in themselves are very exciting development for you. But maybe before we do that, as we have talked about it, and some people will have now have put down their washing, or maybe taking a seat on the bench in a park if they all having a walk or whatever it is they're doing. Then maybe we can. How long roughly does one of these techniques
so
usually
about
last?
5 minutes. So what I usually do is I take people through 1 minute of a few techniques so that they can use in combination or use by itself. So maybe 4 to 5 minutes.
If you're not quite ready, don't worry. You can take a minute to prepare yourself while I remind you of the wonderful topics we've already covered in this episode of Storytelling with Puck. Our guest, Hansa Pankhania, has told us where her interest in well-being and stress prevention originated. She's explained why even the most skeptical businesses could do with taking a step back, and she's told us an amazing story about her reasons for going to university as an adult. We'll hear more about that story in part 2. We'll also go to Kenya, India, and back to the UK to experience the best of 3 worlds. We'll educate ourselves on the Africanization policy, and we'll discover Hansa's mindful writing. There will of course be a story from Puck Creations at the end of this episode. For all of that, sit comfortably. We'll be back in 30 seconds. For 5 minutes of reinvigorating meditation. First, here's our friend Andrew Thorpe showing us why we're all in the persuasion game.
We're all in the persuasion business, whether that's pitching to a potential client, selling ourselves in a job interview, or convincing a teenager to tidy their room. How we frame our message and how we deliver it makes all the difference. And this is the theme of my podcast, Leaning Forward. I'm Andrew Thorpe. I'm a speaker, a trainer, and a storyteller. And I'd love you to tune in to our latest episode.
So wherever you're sitting or lying, make sure your arms and legs are uncrossed and your back is straight, and just shuffle so that you're comfortable, because you won't be able to relax if you're not comfortable in your position. So firstly, we start by taking the attention into our body. And the only way we can deal with stress is if we actually listen out for the signs of stress in our body. If you're not listening and they get overlooked, that's when we get those shocks, at a later time of the build-up. So it's very important to listen every day, whether you're in underload or overload, and any signs in your body that says that you're not in balance. So if you're not feeling at peace with yourself and relaxed, the indication is you need to do some work on being more relaxed and balanced. So just take the attention within your body, notice any signs, any tension in your body, and make a note to address that at some point. And I'm going to start with the first technique, which is mindfulness. And mindfulness is very simple. It's focusing on an object or your breath. So just be aware of the movement in your breath, in your body. As you breathe in and out, there's a rise and fall in your chest and abdomen. And just observe that movement of your breath in your body for the next minute. If you want to count your breath, if that helps you to focus, that's a good idea. So you can count to 10 and then start again from 1 to 10 and again from 1 to 10. And you can carry on this practice for about 10 to 15 minutes at home. But let's just do that for 1 minute. So just focus on the movement that your breath is making in your body for about a minute. And the next technique is the body scan, where we relax each part of our body in sequence. And our mind is very powerful. When your mind commands your body to relax, it will. So take your attention to your face and relax your face. Relax the back of your head, your neck, your shoulders. Shoulders is somewhere where we hold a lot of tension. So just drop those shoulders and let go and relax. Relax your arms and your fingers. Relax your chest and your abdomen. Relax the whole of your back from the top of your neck to the base of your spine. And relax your pelvic area, your thighs, knees, calves, ankles, feet, and toes. And just let go and relax your whole body. If you want to, you can imagine all the tension seeping down from your head to your toes, through the room, through the layers of the earth, and going straight down to the center of the earth and disappearing forever. If you want, you can imagine bright white light coming from the center of the earth in reverse order, through the layers of the earth, through the room, through your feet, seeping up your body right up to your head, spreading out around you, making a beautiful white, vibrant bubble of white light. and just soak in that white light in every cell of your body. And that was the white light meditation. There's a very simple, basic meditation, which there's nothing mystical or complicated about. Just choose a positive word. So it can be a word like love, bliss, comfort, relax. Traditionally, in meditation, the mantra Om is used, so you may or may not choose to use this word for your meditation. And just repeat this word in your mind for the next minute or so. Again, you can practice this for 10-15 minutes every day, but today we're just going to do it for about a minute. If your mind wanders, that's okay. Usually that happens in meditation, but as soon as you notice that your mind is wandering, you bring it back to the word that you have used to anchor your meditation and just continue. So we'll do that for about a minute. And now take a deep breath. Breathe out very slowly. And begin to be present in the room or wherever you are, on the park bench or wherever you are. Just shuffle your body a little bit. Very gently open your eyes and come back to wherever you are in your space. Welcome back, everyone.
We should have done that at the end of this podcast. So I'm in a state of complete relaxation now. It was immense. Thank you. If you are sitting on the park bench, take your time before you get up. You might be... Yes.
So the advice is to just take a few minutes to get back to normal. Like, don't jump into headless chicken mode straight away. Just give your body a little bit of time to adjust. Yeah. You put me on the spot there, but I mean, I do this all the time. So
I have to say, it's clearly natural to you now, because I mean, it definitely worked for me, and I'm sure that it will work for a lot of our listeners as well. It completely changes the way your body feels. I think it can completely change your mind. All of the different thoughts that you have slowly fade and aren't attacking you anymore when you have a technique like that. So I was about to say that one of the techniques you talked about earlier was gratitude, and I, for one, am very grateful for that. So thank you very much, Hansa.
Yeah. So as I said before, these are on our free resources page on aumconsultancy.co.uk, and my book, Stress to Success in 28 Days, is full of techniques like this. So. It
amazing. I'm sure that we're going to have our listeners desperate to buy that book now. But let's talk about not just that book, but all of your books, because you're a prolific writer. You have obviously written the book we just mentioned. You have written, the name always comes out of my head. I'm so sorry. It is Best of Three Worlds, that's the one, yeah. Which I want to talk about in a second, in a bit more. You've written stories around stress to success, and you've also written some children's books. Now, let's talk about these all briefly for a second. So you've mentioned stress to success in 28 days already, and that's obviously inserting some of the techniques we've just done here and that you've talked about before. It sounds like a short time scale to go from being very stressed to feeling good within yourself and being successful again. What does the book do? How is it? How does it guide you?
So basically, the book takes you. The example I gave of the person who was very stressed and then gets to a point where he enjoys his work again, is successful again. So basically, the book just takes you through this journey and you work through it in your own way. So it offers 28 different techniques that you can do each day. And then you pick out the ones that work for you and you carry on with those. And you will see that your state of energy and your state of clarity will begin to change as you work through the program. And obviously, when you're feeling in top form and motivated about things, those are the things that will lead to success. In terms of your career and your relationships, and whatever you want to achieve in terms of what your potential is. So basically, the book helps you to do that.
Okay, perfect. So it's working on what's inside to then eventually be able to support the external factors that you're trying to fix, that you're trying to get right. That makes a lot of sense.
And I talk about the techniques in the context of work as well. So from a personal perspective and from work and an organizational perspective as well. So it covers both those elements.
Okay, incredible. Now, I also want to talk about your other books, especially so Best of Three Worlds, which for some reason the name seems to slip my mind. Tell our listeners a little bit more what that's about, because that's different. That's different to the books you've written, the other books you've written.
That's different to the children's books and the Stress to Success series. So that's my it's a memoir, and it's bringing the best of the three worlds that I grew in, which is Kenya, England, and India. So as I said before, I was born as a British subject in Kenya of Indian origin. So a British subject born in Africa of Indian origin. So I was brought with the three cultures straight away. And so I described my journey of what it's like to have this identity and the fusion of this identity, and the main message from the book is that humanitarian values are the most important thing. So regardless of where you live, where you brought up, if you have unconditional love for everyone around you and you have the basic humanitarian values of compassion and love, home will be where home is, where those things are, regardless of where you are born and what origin you are. So that's the message of the book. But I talk about my life of growing up in Africa, moving to England with very strong Indian influences. I talk a little bit about the colonial journey and the colonial history, the backdrop of that, because as you know, India was a British colony and Kenya was a British colony, and that's how my granddad went to Kenya. And so my dad was there, and then that's where I was born. And then when Kenya got independence, so I actually remember the Kenyan Independence Day. I was I was 7 years old at that time, and I write about my memory of what it was like on Independence Day in Kenya. So half my life in Kenya was as a British subject, and then half my life was as in an independent Kenya, because I came to this country around 16, 17 age. And so then the Africanization policy started in Kenya after independence, and the British subjects slowly started to move over to England, which is when I came to England.
Explain, if you don't mind, explain to our listeners a little about what the Africanization policy is.
So before it was Kenya was governed by Britain, so a lot of the jobs were held in the top jobs were held by British people, English people, and the British subjects. So my dad was a British subject, and so were we. And then after it got independence, there was a policy where the jobs started to be transferred to the African people, and the people who were British subjects started to move over to England. So that's how I came to live in England.
There must be, with all of this happening, and we won't go into too much detail around it all today, because people could read your book and find out more. But I guess internally, with all of this happening, with the change to an independent Kenya, to the history that is not always pleasant in any way, shape, or form, the colonial history that the British have, and also both the similarities and vast differences there must be between both Indian and Kenyan culture, as well as between British culture and those two. I guess that must have created quite a mixture of feelings for you, a mixture of ideas and on identity. And I know you talked about the idea of actually identity and your home being within you, which I think is beautiful and leads to the work you do today as well. But as a younger person, it's not always easy to reflect on things like that. In a very short period of time, explain how you felt.
It's quite interesting, but people expect me to say it was very traumatic, but it was the opposite, because to me, it was completely normal. To me, it was normality. So actually, in England, when my normality was questioned, that's when the trigger for the book came about, because to me, it's normal to speak in three languages all at once. It's normal to eat food from three cultures. It's normal to dress Indian and African and English on a day-to-day basis. For me, it was completely normal and still is. But for other people, the Best of Three Worlds came about because in England, I would often be asked the question, so Hansa, when did you come from India? And I said, I've never lived in India. And so they say, no, but you're Indian. So it's no, I'm born in Africa. So why are you born in Africa and then you're living in England? And so all through the 25 years or so or 30 years or so I was in England, I was kept asking this question. And then one day I was at an English friend's house and my sister called me and I'm talking to my sister. And when I put the phone down, my friend says, you were talking in three languages all at once. Like, how do you do this? So I said, it's because I was brought up with three languages together. But why, and the same question. So you're Indian, why were you living in Africa? So I told my friend, about the colonial history and how that came about. And to me, like, it's completely normal, and so she went off and she did a little bit of research on the colonial history. And she's the one who pushed me to write Best of Three Worlds, because she said that there was no narrative, no personal narrative of British subjects living in the colonies, and my story was fascinating. And so she said, Hansa, by that time I'd written the Stress to Success series books. So she said, Hansa, you've written other books, like, you've got to write this book because everyone needs to know this story, because the normal Joe Blogs on the British street doesn't know how rich your identity is, doesn't know the kind of British subject you are and how much richness of culture you bring to to Britain, and the name of the British subject. And so that's how the book came about, And once I started writing it, I couldn't stop. Like, the stuff just came, and I just kept writing it, But it was a fascinating journey. But people expect me to say it was very traumatic, but actually it wasn't. My journey was absolutely seamless, and it was, apart from a few little bumps, which is normal in life. But and the reason for that is because I was brought up with the humanitarian values to love and respect everybody, and I wasn't brought up to see difference. I was just brought up to see people as people and love them and accept them, and I was brought up to forgive. So at some point, this conversation came up about. I'm actually living in the land of my historical oppressors, because in other people's terms, Britain oppressed India and it oppressed Kenyan, and I'm actually living in the country, and how do I reconcile this, And for me, the reconciliation is very simple. It's just about forgiveness, because forgiveness, really, hatred doesn't solve anything, and being angry and resentful really does not solve anything. And it's taking the good things that came out of that situation and working together to make this a world a better place. And if I went around being very angry and resentful, there's no way I could do that, So I was brought up with those values, and this is why that journey within those three cultures was seamless and very enjoyable, and full of love and joyful, and that's what I write about in my book. Those are the feelings that I try to bring across, and those are the messages I try to bring across.
It's such a beautiful outlook, Hansa, and I wish more of us were brought up to think in that way and to have that mentality towards life. The idea of forgiving, the idea of moving forward together and resolving. It's not that we shouldn't remember our past. Of course we should remember our past, because it's important to learn from it. And it's one of the reasons that I'm enjoying history so much now. But I think that sometimes we don't learn from it, unfortunately. I think some of the stuff in our present is the things we really need to worry about. But to be able to forgive means you can take the next step, I think. And I think that's what you explained really well there, is if you don't have at least that initial point of forgiveness, then actually every conversation will be an argument rather than a discussion of how we can fix and improve lives.
Yeah. And it liberates you. It's not about the other person. So if I was resentful towards the British, nothing's going to change, but I'm not going to be liberated from that burden. So really, forgiveness is about my liberation rather than that person doing something differently, or that person changing, because we can't make any, we have got no control over that. But what we have got control over is our attitude and how we want to be liberated and be free to do good things in this world.
Right. Yes. It's absolutely fantastic. I love it, and it's going to make all of our listeners want to buy your book, to find out even more and to discover how you got to that way of thinking, and to discover a little bit more about how you have encompassed the best of three worlds. Before we talk about where people can find you and to find those books, because obviously we're going to want to guide them. The last set of books that you have are children's books. I say the last, not chronologically, but in terms of us talking today. And so these are all Chakraji books. Chakraji, and you've got Calm Callum, Relaxed Ravina, Peaceful Peter. What's the idea behind these? And I know who they're for. They're for children, but
Yeah.
what's it going to help them with, or
So
are they just for fun?
the Chakraji series is my lockdown project. So during lockdown, I was very concerned with the rising levels of stress within children, and I wanted to do something to use my expertise in that area, and that's how the books came about. So Chakraji is the character that I developed on a retreat, on a writing retreat on a narrowboat barge a couple of years ago. It was just literally the year before lockdown, and then so I went ahead with the stories and the publication of the books during lockdown. So Chakraji is the child's magical friend. The books are for primary aged children, and the child is upset about something, and this beautiful bird comes up and takes the child to this magical place to meet the magical Chakraji. And Chakraji passes a very simple, natural technique to the child that makes the child upset gone, gone. And then on the way back, the bird teaches the child some positive affirmations as well. So the child can use this magic tip that Chakraji passed on, as well as the affirmations, to help the child in any situation that they feel upset in. So each book has got a different backdrop in terms of who the bird is and where the bird takes the child to meet Chakraji. There is a variation of ethnicities and diversity in the children as well. So my second set of the Chakraji books is actually coming out next month. So we've got 3 more to that. So it's Chakraji and Beautiful Bella, Chakraji and Marvelous Mansoor, and Chakraji and Special Suling. So that set is like literally ready, and I'm having a meeting with my marketing guy end of this week on Friday, and we start the campaign in July for that book. So it's a set of 6 books for primary age school children, picture books with that's the kind of storyline that I've just described. And each book's got a different technique and a different affirmations. So there's a repertoire of simple techniques for children and a repertoire of affirmations from children through the stories.
Absolutely fantastic. It sounds so warming, and I think it's good to learn some of these techniques at a young age. And as you say, especially during the pandemic, kids were going through a lot of stress. But I think in general, there's a lot of pressure on kids. There always has been, but these days especially, there's a lot of pressure on kids. So to have something to help them through that, I think is incredible. Now, we've already mentioned your website today, but let's repeat it so that our listeners can hear. We'll obviously put it on the show notes as well. So where can they find you? And also, if they want to connect with you directly, what platform can they go to, or what do they need to do?
Yeah, sure. So I'm on LinkedIn, I'm on Facebook. Our website is AUM for Mother consultancy.co.uk. I've also got a website for my personal brand, which is hansapankhania.com. All my books are available through our websites and Amazon as well. So if you search my name, Hansa Pankhania, in Amazon, all my books will come up. And something I'd like to share is that each month I write the latest in terms of well-being. So I write a blog each month, and we send free well-being tips into your inbox. So if the listeners wanted to subscribe for that, they can go to either of the websites, consultancy.co.uk or hansapankhania.com, and subscribe to go on our list, and you will get a blog with the latest thinking on well-being that I'm working on, and a free well-being tip as well, and any updates on my next forthcoming books that are coming up.
Hansa, it has been such a pleasure. Thank you for relaxing me during the middle of this episode. That's definitely a first. But also thank you for sharing your stories and for explaining a little bit about how people can de-stress. They're now going to discover more once they go onto your website, etc. So thank you once again for joining us on the Storytelling with Puck podcast.
It's been amazing. I've loved it. So it's been, I mean, we could chat forever, you know.
We definitely could, Hansa. We definitely could. We'll have to do it offline, I think. But
carry on offline.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But we will, as always, finish with a story. What came first, the sun or the moon? The knife or the fork? Was it the spoon? How do we light the world in the night? When the sun says goodbye, we must keep it bright. If the sun sets early, do we dock its pay? Does the moon take the slack? It's a full moon today. If the sun sets early, do we all switch off too? Maybe the sun's inside us. We make it shine through. Nonsense poems, who are we owing sensible things, sunshine in spring? Let's joke, laugh, dance and cry. The sun's in the sky, our lights inside. You've just been listening to an episode of the Storytelling with Puck podcast. Your support keeps our podcast going, so please leave us a 5-star review wherever you listen. Subscribe to keep up to date with the latest episodes, and never forget the importance of sharing your stories.